Hail Mary, homies, and paternoster pegs. Cram yourself into an old box. Whisper the juiciest morsels through the grate. And listen, I've got no time for venial sins. Come back when you have full knowledge of the evil of the act.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been 1 week since I listened to Talk Tull to me.
Oh my goodness, take one Talk Tull to me and call me in the morning.
It's also the pharmacist, apparently.
Welcome back to the podcast. I am Omen Thomas Sade.
And I am Nick McGill.
Together we are the fecklessest of momes.
And this, my little recaps and story morals, is Talk Tull to me.
Story morals? I had those removed.
Delicious.
An act of prog penance in the sinning fields of rock and roll, in which not praying every day, Nick, and Omen the imp of impure touching will confess everything that we have ever thought about the entire canon of the works of Jethro Tull, song by song and track by track. We will commit gossips with glockenspielist David Goodyear, despair about the ultimate forgiveness with Ryan O'Donnell, and engage in the sin of excessive noodling with Florian Opal. And if we can keep a lid on our licentiousness, lock the door on our dishonor, and kick calumny under a cloth, we may one day receive a Morse code Our Father from the magician of contrition, the operator of obedience, the flute flagellist, the penitent piccoloist, Ian Absolution Anderson.
Forgive me, flute daddy, for I have sinned.
Forgive me. That's how I got kicked out of the church.
Fair warning, this is the first warm day in 6 months, 5 months. So my windows are open and I'm breathing for the first time. If there is a little breeze, a little wind chime, a little car in the background, that's why. You're welcome. It feels more personal this way. It's like the studio noise that Ian leaves in. I'll try to edit it out, but if you hear it, that's what it is.
You are Persephone. You are making your way up through the crust of the world. And you've worked off your pomegranate debt, and here you are.
Through the crust of the Fray Bentos.
Through the crust of the Fray Bentos. Yes. For eating a Fray Bentos, she was imprisoned in a Fray Bentos.
It's really ironic. So we've discussed before that there is the live in Iceland recording of Thick as a Brick and then Thick as a Brick 2.
We have talked about that, yes, indeed.
I had only ever listened to the Thick as a Brick side up to the point where they got into the prostate cancer part. And it's like, okay, I'm pretty much done with this. Yeah, Ian does, in the middle of Thick as a Brick, he does a prostate cancer, like, hey, everybody, get checked out.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah, I think he's been an advocate of that for a while. But a really interesting thing, I listened to the entire thing, both Thick as a Brick 1 and Thick as a Brick 2 live in Iceland over the weekend. And it was this really interesting moment of like, this is clearly Ian struggling to keep up with Thick as a Brick 1. This clearly feels like a live experience where it's kind of not quite the flow. But when they got into Thick as a Brick 2, it was perfect.
Interesting.
It was perfect. It was such a great version and rendition of it. And it's exactly to be understood and expected when he wrote Thick as a Brick 2. I mean, that was for the tour of Thick as a Brick 2, ostensibly. So, of course, that was completely in his wheelhouse as opposed to the album from 30 years prior.
And do you mean just the playing in general or the vocals or?
The vocals and the pacing felt a little off.
Sure.
I'm sure some of it has to do with the idea that Thick as a Brick 2 was written for those people as well.
Yeah, sure.
That group of personnel was taking on the positions of the band from what, 80s, 70s? From the 70s.
70s. I mean, anytime that you have an album that is so specific, it's going to be hard to reproduce that live, especially years and years after the fact. So, not surprised, but glad it was a good listening experience. And you should get checked out for prostate cancer, especially if you are 45 or older.
I'm doing it right now.
I'm doing it right this very instant.
Oh, that's cold.
I'm checking you out right now.
You've got the control for the what's it called?
Endoscope.
The endoscope, because it goes in the end.
If anyone wants to get checked out, After the concert, I will have my endoscopic flute ready and warm.
Tweet, tweet.
Nick, what are we talking about today here on Talk Tull to Me?
Okay, we are on the antepenultimate track. We are on the first portion of 22 Mulberry Walk. We're going to discuss Confessional.
Indeed.
Indeed, we are.
And we will not commit the sin of presumption.
That's right. We will approach it with knowledge and forethought.
And humility.
And humility.
And humidity.
It is a little sticky.
Ooh, nice.
Nice.
Let's have a listen.
Sure.
Holy harpsichord, Nick.
What a quick little 3 minutes or so.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, this very much feels like the part one of a two-part medley.
Yes, yeah, it certainly does. Oddly enough, this is not one of those instances where they call it a medley, which we've seen 3 or 4 times in this album.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is the one that is the most prominent, where the song ends. And it's clearly just, it's not, I wouldn't even call it a transition. It's just another part of that next song.
But it's split into 2 tracks.
But it is split into 2 tracks, yeah.
Kind of makes one think about the arbitrariness of any sort of divide in the world.
Oh.
Oh.
Wow.
Wow. What's the difference between me and a cheesecake?
Well, after the cheesecake has been consumed by you, not much.
No difference at all.
Is that your excuse for eating cheesecake?
That's why I look like this. We were already one before. We're just making it official.
Yeah, you got married to that cheesecake.
I did. Starting
Mouth
out
married. So sorry.
Thank you. And you. What's the word? And you officiated.
And I officiated that. I approved. I signed the wedding certificate.
You may chomp the bride. Ow. Okay, so the first sound that we have here on Confessional is the gorgeous, the illustrious, the bone-tickling harpsichord.
The synthetic, but still very nice. I love a harpsichord.
In any form, synthetic or otherwise.
Yeah.
Do you know the main difference between the harpsichord and the pianoforte in real life?
I don't know.
They both have keys, obviously. They both have strings.
Mm-hmm.
The main difference is in the way that those strings are sounded. On the pianoforte, there is a collection of hammers that have felt on them that strike the strings.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a harpsichord, as you might guess from the word harp, there is actually a little plectrum that bypasses the string, and then when you press the key, it plucks the string. So that's why it sounds like that.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is literally a harpsichord.
Sichord.
It's a harpsicle.
That I'm just as blown away that sound is made by a pluck. Like, that doesn't sound like it ought to be the pluck, a sound that is the result of a pluck.
Yeah.
Honestly, I always thought that it was, and there's no scientific musical basis behind this, but
I'm really excited to hear it.
Let me tell you about elves. I always thought it was just like the strings were looser than on a piano,
okay,
and therefore had like more like less rigid vibration and sounded messier.
Yeah.
You know?
The slack rope of musical instruments.
The slack piano, yeah.
The slack piano.
The piano Lucy, I think it's called, yeah.
You should look up some harpsichord videos. I think they will thrill you.
Yes, I will take my pants off immediately.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I've already gotten a head start.
Whoosh.
The counterpoint here in this introduction is played by the electric guitar with these sort of short bursts of notes that come through.
It's fun. It's fun. I don't want to call it plucky, but I don't have a better term for it.
But we've already talked about the harpsichord, so.
Right, exactly. But it's like, ba-da-doop, ba-da-doop, ba-da-doop.
It's very staccato.
Yeah.
The notes aren't held out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose that is in contrast to the harpsichord. In whatever manner a harpsichord can be sustained, it feels a little more sustained and stretched out than that really succinct boo-doo-doo electric guitar.
Yeah, totally. Ian comes in singing fairly short order with I made my millions, stashed the pile.
I made my millions, stashed the pile.
And that is acoustic behind him. Some really nice acoustic behind him.
Yes, Ian's own acoustic guitar behind him singing. Ian's voice on this is very soft, very sweet, very confessional.
Yeah, right. It's very personal. It's very, this is the way it is. It's almost, yes, it's confessional, but it almost smacks of like deathbed confessional.
Sure.
You know, this is the end. This is the full on end of this cycle. The absolute end being the death. And each iteration of Gerald is kind of summing up what they did and where they ended up.
Well, and in a way, I think it is a death. I think it is, whether it's a literal death or not, I think it is the death of that part of that version of Gerald's life.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we started nearly every single one of these versions of Gerald, these branches. They started in the school and they kind of said, hey, this is kind of where we're going.
Right.
And then we jump ahead a chunk of time. We don't see kind of that really inciting incident, but then we get to the result of that. And that's kind of the same thing with these pieces as well. I mean, we're talking a little bit more context than anything right now, but we've jumped another chunk of time and here's the end of life, looking back on that bit that we just jumped past again.
You know what this reminds me of? On the last episode of every season of the Great British Baking Program, when it's like, even though Victoria did not win the Great British Baking Program, she still enjoys baking with her dogs in Dorset.
Oh, yes, the recap.
And now has planted a magnolia.
Some of the recaps are a bit more exciting than others, we should say.
Just like life.
Yeah, fair enough.
And even though we do get into some harder sounds throughout the song, that very soft, very contemplative approach does come back and is kind of a theme throughout.
Yeah. That being said, at about 1 minute, that's when we pick up. We break out of that softer side and,
when
we
the
get
organ?
quick. Yeah, we get organ, we get drums and bass.
Enough of twisted overkill, hellfire damnation, voices shrill.
Organ / synth. There's some parts that don't sound quite organic, but more synthetic.
Yeah.
And
as we get into On the Streets of Pretty Pickle in the Gerald the Homeless, kind of where is he now?
Yeah.
Ian moves into a much more heavy speak singing.
On the streets, a pretty pickle.
And then when we get into the third verse, Gerald the chorister, we have a lot of the drum and bass come in. And we also have of the voice filter that we heard at various points on this album.
Enough of twisted overkill, hellfire damnation, voices shrill.
Because in Give Till It Hurts, the second portion of Gerald the chorister,
yes, it's got that radio filter.
He is filtered through that radio, yeah.
Eventually, we get through all of the recaps, and we have just about a minute left, and that is when the old Thick as a Brick theme comes back. Dun, 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 dun,
yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, that portion is really cool.
It's really fun.
Yeah. It feels almost rushy at points when we get the bum.
The band rush?
Yeah.
That I totally thought that. For me, it's the drumming. The drumming in this section is the biggest of any drumming that we have in the whole album, I feel like, at this moment.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Like you said, it has that brief aspect of the original Thick as a Brick, but it still adds into the overall drama and theme of what we've been hearing so far.
Yeah, and there is that kind of rush quality to it where you have the guitar just doing these massive chords that are big and sustained, and then you have the drums being like, and that is an exact recreation.
Yes, that's what Neil Peart's work sounds like, yeah.
That's what Neil Peart sounds like.
Oh,
yeah.
So sorry. Before that happens, though, that's like 2:15-ish. But we do have a really quick drop off about 1:45-ish, 1:42.
Yes.
So we go from that really big, we build up, and then we drop. And when we go back into that kind of softness that we hear at the beginning, although it's not harpsichord at that point, it's acoustic and organ.
Okay, yes.
Behind. And I believe that's Ian with his final verse. I think that's where he sings that.
Sold the shop, flicked off the power switch.
If you were to describe the overall movement of this particular track, how would you describe it musically?
Abrupt. You know, it feels like we go up to this cliff and then we drop straight off and then we try to go back up that cliff again. It's not terribly fluid in its transitions.
Interesting. Yeah.
Not a complaint at all.
No, I think it's interesting how we kind of have that, you know, almost the most soft that Ian ever sings ever in the beginning. And then we kind of move through this really heavy rock section and end up kind of with that glide, with that soaring, coasting quality toward the end, which leads in and, you know, it sets up a chord that goes straight into the next track.
Yeah, after a tiny little false ending.
After a tiny little false ending, yes.
And it's so interesting to me. It's so strange to me, this build up in that cliff, and then it goes into the softer side of things again. And then it kind of ends and takes us into that, like, the weird build up and really cool instrumental sound that flows directly into the second portion, Kismet and Suburbia.
Yeah.
It breaks the flow having that weird spot in there. It's an interesting choice that it's not, it makes it so these two songs do have a distinct break, but it's like the last 5 seconds of this song should have been the first 5 seconds of Kismet.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's very strange to put the track break there.
I think it fits into, I mean, who knows? Maybe it was a...
Yeah.
Overall, I feel like we recently talked about Broken Bride by the band Ludo.
Get in on the feckless. You can get that by subscribing to our Patreon for $5 a month. If you really want the goodness, get in on the Tull Skull Plus level at $15 a month. You get video of all of the goodness.
Bow chicka wow wow. Brown chicken, brown cow.
We are in a barnyard.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it was a barnyard written by George Orwell.
Ooh.
Okay, but we were talking about in Ludo how there are certain sonic cues to that album, to Broken Bride, which make us think of the Fates or, you know, the time stream or whatever. It's not a dissimilar kind of set of potential rules that are in the universe of Thick as a Brick 2. It's kind of what are all the possibilities if you break the timeline apart. And what I get at the end of this confessional track is a little bit of that sense of somebody saying, I've done all this, I've kind of reached this crux where a huge decision has to be made or a huge change has been made. what now? And you kind of have the sonic hand of fate coming in to say, well, now this.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't necessarily work out how you would expect. I don't know if any of the Geralds get what they deserve or get what they, in any regard.
Yeah.
It just is sort of life.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't really know how to put it. It's because we don't cover all of the aspects of Gerald, right? Gerald the homeless, Gerald the banker, Gerald the court. I guess we do.
We do.
Was it only 5? Yeah. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I take it all back then.
We have references to Gerald the politician in other forms of media associated with this album, like the website.
That's right. But we didn't actually sing about him.
We didn't sing about him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still interesting. Maybe it will make a little bit more sense when we talk next week about the second portion of this to really bring 22 Mulberry Walk into kind of a cohesive piece, a medley, not medley. But as of right now, it's still a little amorphous, this break in the sonic sound. I think we'll have to, before we listen to Kismet, I think I'll have to listen to Confessional just to really get that flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
As our Lord and Savior Ian Anderson intended.
Exactly.
This is a visual for everybody.
Oh,
look at this.
It's a box. It's a small cardboard box and a knife in Nick's hand.
That's right. This is a live unboxing. A live unboxing of...
Oh. Frey Bento! Steak and kidney!
Steak and kidney, baby.
Oh.
And it's in the sides are angled so it looks like a little pie tin.
Yeah! That is so exciting.
I'm very excited.
I'm so curious about the person who was like, here I am putting a single Frey Bento's pie into a box.
And sending it to some dumb American. It came from Tipperary, Ireland.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Yeah.
And ultimately probably came from Argentina.
Oh, it's possible. It's highly possible.
You have to see where it's made.
Scotland. Frey Bento's Foods. I'm not going to pretend to pronounce that. Scotland. It's very specifically in bold. It says not for the EU.
Oh, yes. Yes.
64 pastry layers, Omen. We'll get into it. We'll get into it when you come up in April.
We will literally get into it.
I'll dive right into it.
We'll get stuck into it. That's very exciting, Nick. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes, I'm very excited. We'll post a video of our consumption of it. We've already dipped our toes into this confessional so far, kind of trying to put things into perspective. But why don't we really take it all off and jump right in?
Yeah, why don't we start with, what is a confessional?
Confessional is when you go to church and confess your sins.
Particularly the Catholic Church.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, the guiltiest of the churches.
But it also has a holdover in things like Anglicanism, things that came from Catholicism.
How guilty do you feel today?
And the whole idea is that because in this branch of Christianity, you don't have a direct relationship with God, right? The priest is
it's the middleman.
The priest is the middleman, the conduit, if you will.
Yes, yeah.
You have to confess your sins to the priest, and the priest will tell you how to rectify them.
Yeah, the priest knows. He keeps a tally. That's what he went to clerical, liturgical, theological.
Yeah.
Any one of those. Illogical school.
Yeah.
That's priest 101 is you learn
sin counting,
the degree of the sin and how that translates to what prayers you need to say.
Right, because the venial sins are ones that don't threaten the soul with injury, although they do muddy it or something.
Yeah, it's a little stain.
And then the deadly sins are the ones that kill the grace in the soul, like literally.
Venial and what's the other one? Is it just called deadly? What's it called?
There's the vernal.
Vernal? That's just the spring sins?
The spring sins, yes.
Yeah.
Most of my sins are vernal. Eternally.
Eternal vernal.
Eternal vernal.
It's your wrestler name.
That's it. So we have this whole idea of, I mean, we've sort of had the background on each of these 5 men. Each of these 5 Geralds. We know where they came from.
Leading up to this point, you're saying.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah, we had their jumping off point. We had the moment that really encompassed where they were in that life, that really defined them as the banker, the homeless,
right,
the chorister, the military man, or the ordinary man.
Right. So we start with the title, Gerald the Banker, and that's just in silent singing, that is not sung.
Yes, correct. Yeah, that's the label. That's the top secret. Unless you have silent singing, you don't know who is speaking there. I mean, you can guess, but...
Yeah. So he starts, I made my millions, stashed the pile, in Swiss bank havens, lost the lot. When inland revenue got wise, so I did my time. My time for what?
I made my millions, stashed the pile, in Swiss bank havens, lost the lot. When inland revenue got wise, so I did my time for what?
Yeah, the more I read these, the more I think this is really kind of deathbed confession. You've already died and you're meeting your maker, or you're kind of in this limbo area of like, why did I do what I did? Was it worth it? That kind of thing.
It could be.
A little bit, yeah. So he made his millions. He had offshore accounts, so he didn't have to pay taxes.
And the way that we know that this is a work of fiction is that he got caught.
Yes, exactly. White collar crime? No, doesn't exist. It's fantasy.
Yeah. We moved on to Gerald the Homeless. On the streets, a pretty...
Oh, so just the inland revenue is in the States, that's the IRS. That's
yes, correct. Yeah, right. Moving on to Gerald the Homeless. On the streets, a pretty pickle. I met a man who lifted me.
On the streets, a pretty pickle. I met a man who lifted me.
It's nice. I mean, last time we saw Gerald, he was like really down and out.
And really kind of doubting life choices and
his own humanity.
Where he came from, where he's going.
He was committing the sin of...
Despair.
Actually, literally.
Yeah.
The man took me home for slap and tickle, in civil partnership pledged to me.
Took me home for slap and tickle, in civil partnership pledged to me.
He encountered somebody who wasn't just after him for his hot bod.
Although that's what the slap and tickle is. So
it may have started out as interested in his hot bod.
Yeah.
But he ended up in a civil partnership, which is presumably as close to marriage as a sinning homosexual could get at that whatever day and age this is.
Right. 20. Well, yeah. Well, no, I guess this is present day.
Present day in 2012.
Yeah.
When was same-sex marriage legalized in the UK? 2014.
Okay.
Wow.
So it would only be civil partnership, and you'd probably be lucky enough to get that.
Well, at that time, that was what was available.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. Interesting. Moving on to Gerald the Chorister. Enough of twisted overkill, hellfire, damnation, voices shrill.
Enough of twisted overkill, hellfire, damnation, voices shrill.
Really funny that we have that in contrast to the whole vocal performance that is Give Till It Hurts.
Yeah, right. The sweet pleading, like, hey, just give us some money.
And also the radio voice of,
yes,
everybody get down with Jesus.
Yeah, yeah.
The American voice that he did. That was part of the twisted overkill.
Yeah, right. And that also, to me, twisted overkill to me feels like hyperbole, exaggeration.
Oh, yes.
To scare the sinners, quote unquote, to scare the listeners.
Oh, yeah.
To give their money and pray and do all of this.
That's the shim-shammery of it all.
The shim-shammery shamoo.
I was rumbled, defrocked, and tumbled from grace and favor, caught hand in till.
I was rumbled, defrocked, and tumbled from grace and favor, caught hand in till.
What's rumbled, Omen?
Rumbled? I suppose I'd like to think that it was some event that rocked him to his foundation, that it was so cataclysmic that it made him feel like an earthquake.
It's actually a Britishism, meaning I got busted. I got caught.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But yes, you would be rumbled in that moment. Sure. I'll give it to you.
Defrocked is when you are, you say, no, you can't wear the holy cloth anymore.
They take the frock.
Frock you.
You say frock off.
He's a pilf. A priest I'd like to frock.
Nice.
Cotton-handed till. The till is the cash register.
Right, which in that case is the donations.
Yeah, or the entire budget of the church.
Right, yeah.
Moving on to Gerald, the military man. Interesting, this is our only 3-line verse. Mostly it's 4 lines.
It's because invalided, civilian, and rehabilitation have a lot of syllables, I think.
Yeah. Invalided, out of theater, civilian, rehabilitation.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't figure out how that scans.
Invalided out of theater, so the theater of war.
Yes.
And to be invalided is to become an invalid by virtue of one's injury.
Invalided out of theater.
I've never heard of it as a verb before.
That's because no one in the history of the English language has ever used it as a verb.
No one but Ian.
Nope. Civilian rehabilitation. That's interesting that he's talking about civilian rehabilitation. We were talking when we were covering that section about the difficulties that a lot of military folk have when they come back to civilian life.
Right.
Because it is such an adjustment of lifestyle and mindset.
And the possibility, I mean, maybe even equal likelihood of not being taken care of when you get back.
Oh, yes. That is the more likely thing to have happen.
Yeah.
My time now given to help my brothers find cold feet, lost building nations.
Civilian rehabilitation. My time now given to help my brothers find cold feet, lost building nations.
To help my brothers makes me feel like he has, after having lost a sense of meaning in the actual war, he has regained a sense of meaning by helping those who are in similar situations to himself.
Right, but is the break, my time now given to help my brothers break, find cold feet? I know it's a new line,
Sure.
but is it my time now given to help my brothers find cold feet? Lost building nations, meaning those cold feet were lost building nations, but how does that work?
Oh!
Because cold feet means to doubt and be nervous, right? Like if you have cold feet for a wedding.
It could also mean that they are sleeping rough.
Oh, that's true.
They have cold feet from sleeping out on the streets.
Yeah.
But also to have them, oh!
Give it to me, please.
It's a prosthetic. It's a cold foot. It's cold because it's metal.
Sure. Right.
He's helping his fellow soldiers get fitted with prosthetic legs
Nice.
because their feet were lost in nation building.
The choice of the phrase cold feet is really interesting.
I think it is one of those typical Ianisms where he throws us a little red herring.
Yeah, I guess so.
A known phrase, but uses it in a way that is not the same as how we've typically heard it before.
Right. And can't be used in a double meaning either.
Right.
We can't use that in the standard definition of cold feet.
Right. But we want to, and so we have to go, ugh.
But oh God, I want to, yeah. To cram it in there.
Yep. And then we have finally Gerald, the most ordinary man, sold the shop, flicked off the power switch. In silent siding, Mallard must stay.
Sold the shop, flicked off the power switch. In silent siding, Mallard must stay.
I don't know what the Mallard is in that context.
I do. Good old folky Phil coming in to save us yet again.
Doing the heavy lifting.
Yep. Mallard, referenced in Confessional, was a celebrated steam locomotive, which set rail speed records and became a totem of British engineering excellence.
Okay.
It's featured in many modern or toy train sets.
Well, there it is. So, sold the shop, and now let me tell you about everything that happened to my trains.
Yeah, the important bits, yes.
Yeah, no mention of the wife.
Yeah.
So his prized possession, his prized train, or his favorite train, stays in silent siding.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have room wherever he's going to take his trains. Carriages and sleek coal tender, those are both types of train
cars, yeah.
packed in boxes sold on eBay.
Carriages and sleek coal tender, packed in boxes, sold on eBay. Sold on eBay.
Sold on eBay.
Sold on eBay.
And I want to read Folky Phil's take on Slap and Tickle because it's very funny.
Please.
Slap and Tickle from the same song is, as we know, a British slang for fun, casual sex. This is not to be confused with serious, formal sex for which an appointment is required. Both very British.
Just a bit of slap and tickle.
Yeah, and that's it. He sold his stuff, and that's where we are. That's where we are, but at the half point of this medley, not medley. Looking forward, thinking about Kismet in Suburbia. Confessional isn't a deathbed confessional, I think. I think it's more, we're seeing them at another like really crucial turning point in their lives.
Yes.
To when they get into, I wouldn't quite say like retirement per se, but a transition from that life that has defined them up until that moment.
Exactly.
Them being him, Gerald, yeah.
Yes. I absolutely agree. I think it's a little bit of a midlife crisis moment. I mean, it's a bit simplistic to say it that way, but another thing that occurs to me is that tracing each of these Geralds, each of them has potentially committed the sin, thinking of it in the sense of a confessional.
Oh, yeah.
They've each committed the sin of pride in some way. Gerald the banker, you could say he's committed the sin of money gluttony. What's that called? Greed?
Greed?
You know the one.
I'm a glutton for money.
But you could also say that it's pride. You know,
yeah.
I deserve this because I'm me.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Gerald the homeless, you know, you could cut his sin in any number of ways. And I'm sure he did. But, you know, maybe it is the sense of pride of saying, you know what, I don't need anyone. I don't need my parents. I don't need society. I'm going to live out here on the street and just, you know, I'm outside of it all.
Yeah.
There is a certain pride that comes with that.
Right.
And we see the sort of flip to each of these prides. You know, Gerald the banker flew so high that now he's gotten knocked down by the inland revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Gerald the homeless has been redeemed in some sense. He's rejected the love of the world, and suddenly there's some guy saying, hey, no, actually, I want to be married to you.
He was already low.
He was committing the sin of despair.
Yeah, and for Gerald the banker, it's not, I'm currently in prison. I did my time.
Right.
I did my time. I paid for my crimes. My time for what, though? Basically saying, I lost all the money. Was it worth it?
What did I do it all for? Yeah.
Why did I do it? Yeah.
The chorister, absolutely pride there.
Yeah.
Gerald the military man, you could say that that's pride. And then we have Gerald the ordinary man. Did he spend his entire fortune on trains and go broke? And therefore have to sell the sword?
He was too proud of his trains. Or on the same token, like he was too obsessed with his trains and therefore distracted, and then the store suffered for it. Kind of hand in hand.
Father, I've committed the sin of pride. Regular pride or train pride? Oh, train pride. Oh,
Trains.
No.
But every single one of these is, I'm picking up the pieces in a sense.
Yes.
I'm kind of climbing out of this hole of despair.
Yes.
That my pride has put me in. And whether it's really quite positive, like finding a civil partnership, or kind of having to restart your life completely over, like Gerald the banker, there is this sense of, where do I go from here? Where's this going to take me?
But that there is a path.
Yes, right. It's not the end of the story.
Right. It's not, I made my millions and now I'm stuck in prison forever. There's a sense to me of, we've talked about Dante and the Divine Comedy in relation to this album quite a fair bit.
So much.
And there's a difference between the people that Dante sees in the Inferno, who are beyond redemption. All that they are good for is punishment. And that's it. But then he goes through Purgatorio, and there he sees all the souls who have some stuff to work out, and they do it in these interesting graphic ways that are suitable to their sins. But they are in a process of purging their sins, and ultimately that means that they have access to ascend to the earthly paradise, even if it takes them, thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
This, I get a sense, more of purgatory, more of I've done the sitting, and now I am starting out on my journey of making it up.
So do you think they're like stepping into purgatory? At this point in the story, they're stepping into and saying, well, I've got to do my time now for that? Or is this first step out of purgatory? It's the first day of the rest of your life.
That's a great question, and I think that we might answer it next week.
I think we might. We'll keep that in mind.
We'll definitely remember that.
Especially because we're recording that episode tomorrow.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, behind the mic.
I'll put a little note on this piece of paper.
That's a great idea.
What were we just talking about?
Frey Bento Spy. Omen, as we've been saying for the last several hours, the next song is the second half, the conclusion, I guess, maybe, possibly, of 22 Mulberry Walk. We are going to discuss Kismet in Superbia. Kismet in Superbia next week. The second to last track, actually, off of this album.
Yes, the penultimate track reminds me of that wonderful 1950s musical, Kismet. Take my hand, I'm a stranger in paradise.
We're halfway there. Ho, ho, living on a prayer.
Oh my God, I had all morning. Does your brain ever do that thing where it takes two songs that have a similar chord structure and mashes them up without you asking to?
Yep. Yeah, thank you, brain.
I had Jimmy Buffett's A Pirate Looks at 40 mashing up all morning with Kiss the Girl from The Little Mermaid.
I don't know the Jimmy Buffett song at all, but that's very funny.
Mother, mother ocean, I can hear you call. Sitting in a black lagoon. Dee 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 dee.
Well, until next week, I have been rumbled, defrocked, and tumbled. I am Nick McGill.
I am sold on eBay. I'm Omen Thomas Sade.
We are a pair of pretty pickles, the feckless momes.
And this is your weekly slap and tickle. Talk Tull to me. Ominous do no sinning. Announcement for the congregation: due to the shortage of trained priests and the fantastic amount of sin which has been committed lately, we are going to be asking the congregation to double up in the confessatoriums. Please, two at a time, two at a time. Thank you very much. Oh, excuse me. Do you mind if I just slide past?
No, I can scoot in. It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
I'm going to have to put one of my legs a little bit on your leg. It's sort of like a half lap.
Yeah, that's fine. I won't have any impure thoughts. And if I do, I'm right here, so I can confess.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to close the door.
Oh, it's stuffy in here.
You have 5 minutes total. Please confess each of your sins.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been 3 months since my last confession.
Oh, that's pretty bad.
It's not that bad.
Sorry.
I was on
Go ahead.
vacation. My most recent sin, I would say, is impure thoughts.
You said you weren't going to have any of those.
But I'd confess it if I did, okay?
Okay, fine.
Impure thoughts. You go. Your turn.
Hello, Father. It's me now. I have something to confess. It has been 30 minutes since my last confession. I do want to confess to...
Show off.
I confess to clogging up the lines at the confessional, just because I love confessing so much, because I hate sinning. I I love the sin or I hate the sin.
Did you sin a lot in the last 30 minutes to get back in here? Is that what?
Yeah, I've done destruction of property.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
It was a Starbucks.
Well, you should probably get an award for that. So last week, Father, I saw a boat and really wanted it. I really wanted a boat.
What kind of a boat was it? Sorry to interrupt.
It was a boat that had a bunch of donkeys on it.
Oh, a donkey boat. Oh, I saw that one.
Yeah. So I coveted my neighbor's ass.
Oh, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
While you're thinking of your next one, I've been selfish. I've been selfishly taking up a lot of room right here in the confession booth. I'm also feeling unjustified anger at the situation and my confession body.
Yeah.
I'm just feeling so much anger. And why? And for what?
Father, I just want to circle back on those impure thoughts. Just don't forget that. So I told my son, I lied and told my son that the Tooth Fairy was married to Santa Claus, that he and Mrs. Claus got divorced because he had a side piece with the Tooth Fairy. And I kind of feel bad about that. I think it's funny, but like in a bad way.
I struggle with that too. It's like, it's like fun, but bad. That reminds me, actually, Father, over here, I've disobeyed the moral law in a grave manner, but without the full knowledge of what I was doing because I was jerking it.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
And I'm thinking about doing it again when I leave here. So can I get pre-forgiven for that?
Impure thoughts. And then, Father, I was at a graveyard and I laughed when an old lady fell down.
Oh, that was you?
Yes.
Oh
yes.
My God.
That was me. I don't even have anybody in that graveyard. I don't know why I was there.
Crazy. Father, I want to confess to dressing up like an old lady in order to steal things and then stashing them in the graveyard. I guess that'd be excessive materialism, indifference to good and evil, and in a way, homosexual actions.
Yeah.
I dressed up as an old lady and I went in and I stole from a store. I said, I'm here for the donation. And they just gave me all a bunch of cash, canned foods. I stuck it in a grave. I'm going to go dig it up later.
I really cannot stress impure thoughts enough, Father.
I second that, and I can attest to his impure thoughts. I feel them. And listen, if you give me a nickel, I'll move my thigh in just the right way.
Father, can I tattle on him for offering prostitution? Is that a thing? Do I get like a bonus free sin for that or free forgiveness?
Can I confess his sins? He's masturbating. He's masturbating right now, Father.
I'm just jiggling my leg because I'm nervous.
Father, I have a worse sin. I have the worst sin of all. I've been presuming that I am so cool because I listen to a podcast, and selfishly and superstitiously and excessively, I'm a glutton for listening to this podcast. I hate not listening to this podcast. I'm indifferent to not listening to this podcast, and I'm jealous when other people listen to this podcast and I'm not. I despair that I will not be able to listen to this podcast anymore. It's Talk Tell to me.
Oh, wow. That's bad. That's bad. You do know that they're a proud member of the Feckless Mums audio network, right?
What are you fellas doing in the church dumpster? Get out of there! Get out! Get! It's like raccoons.
I confessed to a pizza box.
I wonder why the priest was so quiet and smelled like cheese.
And greasy.